I was only 14 when I discovered the truth that broke my heart into pieces. My father had abused my sister in the dead of night, and I walked in on them without meaning to. I froze, my hands shaking, my breath trapped inside my chest like it was chained. My sister Mary was crying, her little hands clutching the blanket, begging him to stop. And my father, a man I once thought was strong and good, looked at me with eyes darker than a cave. I thought that was the worst thing I could ever see in my life. But what came next shocked me even more. When my mother found out about what happened, I expected her to scream, to protect Mary, to call for help. Instead, she whispered something so cruel, so heartless, that my ears burned just hearing it. She said, "Let's sell the baby and become rich." I could not believe it. My father had destroyed my sister, and my mother wanted to turn her pain into money. That night, the walls of our house felt like they were closing in on me, like I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. But before I could even say a word, my mother turned and looked me straight in the eyes. Her face was hard like stone. And she said something that made my knees almost give way. To understand how I got to that terrible moment, I must take you back to the beginning. My name is Grace, and this is my story. I grew up in a small village where everyone knew each other's names. The houses were close together, and children played in the dusty roads barefooted. People laughed in the mornings, and in the evenings, neighbors sat outside telling stories under the stars. If you looked from the outside, you would think I lived in a happy home, but inside those walls was a secret storm. My father, John, was a farmer. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a voice that made people obey him. To outsiders, he looked like a hard-working father. But to us at home, he was a man with a temper. He drank too much and often shouted at my mother for little mistakes. My mother, Anna, was a quiet woman who rarely raised her voice. She spent most of her time cooking, washing clothes, or working in the small market to sell vegetables. I was the eldest daughter. Then came Mary, my younger sister. Mary was only 12 at the time of the terrible night. She was small, with big innocent eyes and curly hair. She loved to sing while helping my mother cook. I also had two younger brothers, Paul and Peter, who were much younger and didn't notice the things Mary and I noticed. Growing up, I noticed my father's eyes lingered too long on Mary sometimes. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. I tried to push away the thoughts, but something inside me always felt wrong. I used to tell myself, "No, he is our father. He cannot do anything bad to his own children." Life in our house had its highs and lows. Sometimes my father would come home with roasted meat, laughing and playing with us. Those were the good days, and I would pretend we were a normal family. But other days, he would come home drunk, shouting, throwing things, and sometimes hitting my mother. On those nights, I would hug Mary in the corner and whisper to her, "Don't worry. One day we will leave this house and find peace." But I never knew the evil waiting ahead of us. The night it all started, the moon was high, and the house was quiet. My mother had taken my brothers to her sister's house because they were sick with fever. It was just me, Mary, and my father in the house. I remember lying on my mat, trying to sleep, when I heard soft footsteps. At first, I thought it was Mary going outside to get water. But then I heard her whisper, "Please, Papa, no." My body froze. I sat up, my ears sharp. The sound was coming from Mary's room. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would explode. Against my better judgment, I tiptoed to her room and opened the door just a little. That was when I saw it. My father over Mary, and her little face stained with tears. For a moment, the world around me stopped. I wanted to scream, to grab something and hit him, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. When he noticed me, he didn't look ashamed. Instead, he looked angry, like I was the one in the wrong. He hissed at me, "Get out!" But I couldn't move. I kept staring at Mary, wishing I could pull her out of that darkness. The next morning, my mother came back. I thought finally, she would protect Mary. I waited until my father left the house. Then I told her everything I saw. I expected her to cry, to run to Mary, to shout at him. Instead, she sat down quietly and rubbed her forehead. Then, in a voice I will never forget, she said, "If she has a baby, we can sell it. We will become rich." My whole body trembled. My own mother, the woman who gave birth to us, was planning to sell her grandchild, a baby that didn't even exist yet, like it was nothing more than a goat or chicken in the market. I wanted to believe she was joking, but the coldness in her eyes told me she meant every word. I looked at Mary, who sat silently, staring at the floor. She didn't even cry anymore. It was like her tears had dried up. And I realized she was already broken inside. That night, I lay awake, thinking of what to do. If I spoke out, my father might kill me. If I kept quiet, my mother would sell Mary's child. My young heart was torn between fear and courage. But before I could decide, something happened that threw us all into chaos. The very next day, my father came home with blood on his shirt. When my father walked into the house that evening, his shirt was stained red. For a moment, I thought it was wine or palm oil, but the thick smell hit my nose before I could even speak. It was blood. He dropped his machete on the wooden table, breathing hard, sweat dripping from his forehead. His eyes darted around the room as if he wanted to see if anyone was watching him too closely. My mother froze when she saw him. Mary, who was sitting in the corner plaiting her doll's hair, clutched it so tight I thought the head would pop off. "Where have you been?" my mother asked slowly, her voice trembling. "Don't ask me stupid questions," my father barked. His voice was sharp, and the air in the room became heavy. He walked to the basin, poured water over his hands, and rubbed them like he was trying to erase something from his skin. I couldn't stop staring at the blood. My heart pounded like drums at a festival. My mind filled with questions I didn't dare ask. Whose blood was it? What had he done? For the rest of that evening, the house was silent. He didn't explain, and none of us dared to push. But when night came and he began to snore on his mat, I whispered to my mother, "Mama, what happened? Why is Papa covered in blood?" She gave me a long, cold stare. "Keep quiet, Grace. You talk too much. If you want to live long in this house, you must learn to close your mouth." Her words stung, but I understood the warning. In that house, silence kept you alive. The next day, life returned to its strange normal. My father went out to the farm. My mother sold vegetables at the market. Mary washed clothes quietly, never lifting her head. My two little brothers played with sticks outside, too young to sense the darkness hanging over us. Sometimes I wondered if other families lived like us. Did other fathers return home with blood on their clothes? Did other mothers talk about selling babies like bags of rice? Did other sisters hide their pain so well that even tears refused to come? There were low days when nothing much happened. On those days, I carried water from the stream, cooked yam, swept the compound, and prayed silently that my father would not return early. Those were the calmer hours of my life, though they were filled with fear that could never rest. But then there were the high days, the extreme ones, when something happened that shook the ground under my feet. Those days came like storms without warning. 2 weeks after the blood-stained night, I woke up before dawn to fetch water. The air was cool, and the crickets were still singing. As I walked past Mary's room, I stopped. I heard soft sobs. I opened the door and found her sitting on the floor, holding her stomach. "What is it?" I whispered. She lifted her tear-streaked face. "Grace, I think something is wrong with me." At first, I thought she was sick. But then she whispered words that made my heart stop. "I have missed my monthlies." I was only 14, but I understood enough to know what that meant. She was just 12, a child herself, and already she might be carrying another child. I felt the world tilt around me. My hands trembled as I hugged her. "Don't worry, Mary. We will find a way. I will protect you." But even as I said the words, fear tightened around my chest. How could I protect her when our own parents were the monsters? Later that day, while my father was away, my mother pulled me aside. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, like she had been waiting for this moment. "She is carrying a child, isn't she?" she asked. I tried to lie, but she slapped me before the words left my mouth. "Don't play games with me. I know these things. And now, Grace, listen carefully. This is our chance. We will keep it secret until the baby is born. Then we will sell it. Do you know how much money people pay for babies these days? Enough to change our lives." Her voice was cold, greedy. She spoke about a baby like it was a goat or a bag of cassava to be traded. I wanted to scream, but fear sealed my lips. When she left the room, I ran to Mary. She sat on the mat, her eyes distant. "What did Mama say?" she asked softly. I couldn't bring myself to tell her. I just held her hand and whispered, "I won't let them take your baby. I promise." That night, as the lantern burned low, I made a decision. I didn't know how, but I would find a way to save my sister and her child. I would not let them sell the baby. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, life showed me how wrong I was. A week later, my father came home earlier than usual. His face was stern, his steps heavy. He sat down and without looking at us, he said, "I know about Mary." My whole body froze. Mary gasped. My mother glanced at him, her face unreadable. He turned slowly toward me, his eyes burning with anger. "And I know you saw everything that night." My legs nearly gave way. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. He stood up, towering over me, and his hand went to his belt. The last words I heard before he raised his hand were, "If you ever open your mouth, Grace, I will kill you myself." His shadow fell over me like a dark cloud. My father's hand was on his belt, and his eyes were filled with fire. "If you ever open your mouth, Grace, I will kill you myself," he hissed. The words cut into me sharper than a knife. He raised his hand high, and I braced myself for the sting of leather across my skin. My knees trembled. Mary covered her face and began to sob quietly. Even my mother did not speak. She stood by the doorway, her face as blank as a wall, watching as if this was just another ordinary night. Then the belt came down. The pain burned across my back, hot and sharp. I cried out, but my father hit me again, and again, until I could barely breathe. With each strike, he shouted, "Keep quiet! Keep quiet!" His voice roared like thunder, filling every corner of the house. When he finally stopped, I lay curled on the floor, my body shaking. He dropped the belt, spat on the ground, and stormed out of the house. The sound of his footsteps faded into the night, but the fear he left behind stayed heavy in the room. Mary crawled to me, tears streaming down her face. "Grace," she whispered, touching my bruised back. "He will kill you one day." I held her hand tightly. "No," I said, though my voice was weak. "He will not. We will survive this. Somehow we will." But deep inside, I was not sure if I believed my own words. After that night, I became quieter. I walked carefully, spoke carefully, and did everything to avoid my father's anger. My body healed slowly, but the scars inside me remained. My mother never asked if I was all right. Instead, she kept talking about the future we could have if Mary's baby was sold. On calmer days, I tried to distract myself with chores. I fetched water from the stream, swept the compound, and cooked yam or beans for my brothers. Paul and Peter were too young to understand what was happening. They played in the sand, laughed loudly, and sometimes climbed trees. I envied their innocence. I wished I could go back to a time when my only worry was whether my doll had clothes. But every time I looked at Mary, my chest tightened. She grew quieter each day. Her once bright eyes were now dim, her laughter gone. Sometimes I caught her staring into space, holding her stomach as if listening to the tiny life growing inside her. One afternoon, while we were alone, she whispered, "Grace, what will happen to my baby?" Her question cut through me. I wanted to tell her everything would be all right. I wanted to tell her I would fight for her and the child. But instead I squeezed her hand and said, "We will find a way. I promise." Even though I had no plan, my heart refused to give up hope. But the more days passed, the more I noticed the danger around us growing. My father was watching me closely now. Whenever I walked into the room, his eyes followed me, sharp and suspicious. Sometimes he would say, "Grace, you are too nosy. You look too much." Those words scared me more than his belt. They were warnings that he was still thinking about punishing me. My mother became restless too. She would sit at night counting invisible money, whispering to herself about how life would change once the baby was born. She no longer cooked with love. She no longer smiled. All she saw was the profit waiting to come. And then, one evening, an extreme event shook our house again. My father came home drunk, more drunk than I had ever seen him. His steps were heavy, and his voice was loud. He called Mary into the room. My heart stopped. I grabbed her hand and whispered, "Don't go." But my mother pushed her forward. "Go. Don't make him angry," she said sharply. I couldn't stay quiet. "No," I shouted. "She's not going." The whole house went silent. My father turned slowly, his face red with drink, his eyes glowing with rage. "What did you say to me?" I swallowed hard, my legs shaking, but I stood my ground. "She's not going," I repeated, though my voice cracked. He marched toward me, his hands clenched into fists. The room seemed to shrink as he loomed over me. I knew I had stepped into dangerous waters, but something in me refused to let Mary suffer again. He grabbed me by the arm and dragged me outside into the dark night. My mother and siblings stayed inside, silent as stones. I cried out, struggling, but his grip was iron. Then he pulled out the machete he had dropped on the table the night he came home with blood on his shirt. The moonlight glinted off the blade, and my heart nearly stopped beating. He held it close to my face and growled, "If you dare defy me again, I will bury you with this." The cold edge of the machete glimmered in the moonlight, and my father's breath was hot against my cheek. My heart thudded so loudly I thought he could hear it. His grip on my arm was iron, and his eyes burned with a wild rage I had never seen before. "If you defy me again, Grace," he growled, pressing the blade closer to my skin, "I will bury you with this machete. Do you hear me?" My throat was dry, but I forced out a shaky whisper. "Yes, Papa." For a long, terrifying moment, he stared at me as though deciding whether to strike. Then, with a grunt, he lowered the blade and shoved me to the ground. I landed hard on the dirt, the pain shooting up my arms, but I dared not cry out. He spat on the ground beside me, turned his back, and staggered into the house. I lay there trembling, staring up at the night sky. The stars twinkled above, so peaceful, so far from the storm that was my life. For the first time, I truly understood that my father would not hesitate to kill me if I got in his way. Mary crept outside after a few minutes, her small figure crouching beside me. "Grace," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I took her hand, still shaking. "No, Mary. Don't be sorry. It's not your fault. I will protect you, no matter what." We sat together in silence, holding on to each other like two leaves clinging to a branch in a storm. The days that followed passed with heavy tension. My father barely spoke to me, but his eyes watched me like a hawk. Every step I took, every word I spoke, I felt his gaze burning into me. My mother acted like nothing had happened, though she sometimes muttered under her breath about the baby and the money. On calmer days, I tried to pretend we were normal. I helped my brothers with their chores, cooked simple meals, and fetched water. Sometimes the village children passed by, laughing and playing, their voices full of joy. I longed to join them, to forget my pain and be a child again. But I knew my childhood had ended the moment I saw what my father did to Mary. Mary grew weaker. She no longer sang while cooking, and her laughter disappeared completely. Her belly began to show slightly, though she tried to hide it under her clothes. She avoided looking at my father, and she barely spoke to my mother. It was as though she had built a wall around her heart to survive. One afternoon, I took her to the stream. The cool air and sound of flowing water gave us a little peace. As we washed clothes, Mary whispered, "Grace, what if Mama sells my baby? What will happen to me?" Her words pierced me like a knife. I held her hand tightly. "I won't let her. We will find a way out of this. We will leave if we must." But deep down, I wondered where we could go. We had no money, no relatives nearby, and no one in the village would believe us if we told them. Our father was respected as a hard-working farmer, and our mother was seen as a quiet, dutiful wife. No one would believe two young girls against them. That night, my mother confirmed my worst fears. She sat us down, her eyes cold and determined. "When the baby comes, we will take it to a woman I know. She pays well. Do you hear me? You will not say a word about this to anyone." Mary's face turned pale. I clenched my fists, anger boiling inside me. "Mama, how can you even think like this? That's your grandchild." My mother's hand flew across my face before I could finish. The sting burned my cheek. "Shut your mouth, Grace. You are just a child. You know nothing of this world. Money is power, and this is our chance." Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of her. I turned to Mary and hugged her tightly, whispering, "Don't worry. I won't let her do this." Days turned into weeks, and the house grew darker with secrets. My father's temper flared often, and my mother grew more impatient as Mary's belly grew. My brothers still played happily, unaware of the storm brewing in our family. Then, one fateful night, another extreme event shattered the fragile silence. My father came home earlier than expected. He smelled of palm wine and carried the same machete. His eyes were bloodshot, his steps unsteady. He called out, "Mary, come here." My stomach dropped. I grabbed Mary's hand, shaking my head. "Don't go," I whispered. But my father's voice grew louder, angrier. "Mary, if you don't come here now, I will drag you myself." Mary's body shook with fear. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice firm. "No, Papa. She won't go to you." The room went silent. My mother's eyes widened, my brothers froze, and Mary gasped. My father's face twisted with rage. He stormed across the room and grabbed me by the neck. His hand squeezed tight, cutting off my breath. My vision blurred, and spots danced before my eyes. "Then you will take her place," he roared. His grip around my neck tightened until I thought my throat would snap. My father's eyes blazed with fury, his face so close I could smell the alcohol on his breath. My arms flailed as I tried to free myself, but his hand was like iron. "Then you will take her place," he shouted, shaking me so hard my teeth rattled. I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved, my lungs screamed for air. Mary screamed from behind me, "Papa, stop. Please stop." My little brothers cried in the corner, their tiny hands covering their faces. Just when I thought I would faint, my mother's voice cut through the chaos. "John, leave her," she cried, pulling at his arm. "If you kill her, the whole village will know. People will ask questions." He paused, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. For a moment, I thought he would strike my mother too. But finally, with a grunt, he shoved me to the ground. I gasped for air, clutching my throat, coughing and crying. He pointed at me, his finger trembling with rage. "This is the last time you will defy me, Grace. Next time, you won't live to see the sun." He stormed out of the house, leaving silence behind him. I lay on the floor, trembling. My neck burned, and each breath felt like fire. Mary knelt beside me, her tears falling onto my face. "Grace, you nearly died," she whispered. I forced myself to sit up, my body shaking. "He will never stop," I said, my voice hoarse. "As long as we stay here, he will destroy us." But where could we go? We were trapped in a house built by fear, with no one to turn to. The next morning, my father acted as if nothing had happened. He sat at the table eating yam porridge, his face calm, his voice steady. My mother served him quietly, avoiding my eyes. My brothers played outside, unaware of the storm inside our hearts. I could barely swallow my food. My throat ached, and every time I looked at him, I felt anger burning in my chest. I wanted to scream, to tell the whole world what kind of man he was. But fear sealed my lips. In the calmer days that followed, I tried to think of a plan. At the stream, I whispered to Mary, "We can't stay here. We need to leave before the baby comes." "But where would we go?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "We have no money. No one will believe us. And if Papa finds us..." Her voice trailed off. She was right. The village respected my father. To them, he was a strong farmer, a family man. No one knew the monster he became behind closed doors. If we ran, people would only send us back. Still, the thought of staying made my stomach twist with dread. Every day, Mary grew weaker, her belly more obvious. My mother became more restless, muttering about the woman who would buy the baby once it was born. She acted like it was a business deal waiting to happen. One quiet afternoon, as I swept the compound, a neighbor passed by. It was old Mrs. Clara, a kind woman who sometimes gave me bread when I fetched water from her well. She stopped, looked at me closely and said, "Grace, are you all right? You look thinner every day." For a moment, I almost told her everything. The words sat on my tongue like stones, heavy and painful. But then I remembered my father's warning, the machete, the bruises. Fear swallowed my courage. I forced a smile and said, "I'm fine, Mama Clara." She studied me for a moment, then sighed and walked away. My heart ached. Help was just a few words away, but fear kept me chained. At night, I prayed silently. "God, if you are there, please save us. Show me what to do." But each morning, the same fear greeted me. Then came the night that changed everything again. My father returned home late, his steps heavy. He looked at Mary, then at me, his eyes narrowing. Without a word, he picked up his machete and sat sharpening it. The sound of the blade scraping against the stone sent chills down my spine. After a long silence, he said, "When that child is born, no one must know it is mine. Do you hear me?" We nodded quickly, too scared to speak. But then he added something that froze my blood. "If anyone dares to speak about this, I will cut their tongue out." The room went cold. My mother bowed her head. My brothers stared, not fully understanding. Mary clutched her belly. And I sat frozen, my hands shaking. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. His words echoed in my head like a curse. I knew then that silence would not save us forever. If we didn't escape, one day, he would kill us all. I turned to Mary, who was sleeping beside me. I touched her hand gently and whispered, "We have to run. Soon." But before I could even think of a plan, something happened that very next morning. We woke up to find blood on Mary's mat. I froze when I saw my mother standing by the window with a stranger. The man wore a long dark coat, his eyes shifting nervously around the room as though he was hiding something. My mother turned quickly and smiled when she noticed me, but that smile was forced. "Go back to bed, Mary," she said softly. But her voice cracked. I didn't move. My heart pounded as I whispered, "Who is he?" The stranger stepped forward and spoke in a deep voice. "Don't be afraid, child. I just came to talk with your mother." But even a child could tell something was wrong. His eyes kept darting toward the small basket in the corner where my baby sister lay, wrapped tightly in an old cloth. I knew at once, this man wasn't here by accident. He was here for the baby. "Mother," I whispered again, louder this time, hoping she would deny it. But she didn't. Instead, she looked down at the floor, avoiding my eyes. "Mary, sometimes in life, we must do things we don't want to do." I felt like the ground beneath me was shaking. "You're going to sell the baby, aren't you?" I shouted, my small voice trembling. The man sighed impatiently. "It is late. Let us finish this quickly." Tears burned my eyes as I ran to the basket, throwing my arms around my baby sister. "You can't take her. She's not for sale. She's my sister." The man's face hardened. My mother grabbed my arm, pulling me back. Her grip was rough, tighter than it had ever been before. "Mary, you don't understand. If we sell her, we will have enough money to eat for months. We will be rich compared to now. Do you want to starve? Do you want to sleep hungry every night?" Her words pierced my heart. Yes, we were poor. Yes, my stomach often ached from hunger. But how could she say that about her own child? "Mother, please," I cried. "Money can't replace her life." The man bent down, ready to lift the basket. At that moment, the door swung open. My father stood there, his face twisted in anger. He had heard everything. "Stop this madness," he roared, his voice echoing through the small room. His eyes landed on the stranger. "Who is this man? What is he doing here?" The stranger stepped back, clearly shaken by my father's fury. My mother's face went pale. She stuttered, I was just trying to find a way to make things better." But before my father could move closer, the baby in the basket began to cry. Her small wails filled the room like a siren, cutting through all the lies. My father lunged forward and shoved the stranger toward the door. "Get out! Never come back!" he bellowed. The man stumbled, nearly falling, then rushed out into the night. I thought maybe things would end there, that my father would protect us all. But then his rage turned on my mother. He grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "How could you think of selling our child? What kind of mother are you?" My mother cried out, "You forced me into this. You ruined me first, and now you pretend to be the hero? You are the monster here." The words hit me like a heavy stone. For the first time, I saw my parents tearing each other apart, both consumed by guilt and anger. The baby's cries grew louder. I ran to her, covering her tiny ears, rocking her gently as tears streamed down my own cheeks. I wanted to scream at both of them. I wanted to run far away. But I was just a child, trapped in their storm. Then, suddenly, my father raised his hand as though he was about to strike my mother. She flinched, closing her eyes. My heart stopped. But before his hand could land, someone knocked loudly on the door. Bang! Bang! Bang. We all froze. The knocking continued, louder this time. My father stepped back, his face dark with fear and anger. My mother wiped her tears quickly, glancing nervously at the door. Who could it be at this hour? I whispered, clutching my sister close. None of us moved. The air was thick with tension. Whoever was on the other side of that door had come with a purpose, and I had a terrible feeling it was connected to the baby. The banging grew heavier, more urgent. "Open this door," a voice thundered from outside. And that was when I realized the nightmare was only beginning. The banging on the door grew louder. Bang, bang, bang. It shook the whole house. My baby sister wailed even harder in my arms, her small cries piercing the night. "Who is it?" my father shouted, his voice trembling between anger and fear. "Open this door before we break it down," the voice boomed. It was deep and commanding, the kind of voice that made you obey even if you didn't want to. My mother's face drained of color. She whispered, "It's them. They've come for the baby." "Them? Who?" I asked, but she wouldn't answer. My father gritted his teeth, stepping toward the door. "If anyone tries to take what's mine, I'll..." Before he could finish, the door burst open with a loud crack. 3 men stormed into the room. They were tall, strong, and dressed in dark coats that made them look like shadows. One of them carried a lantern that flickered, casting their faces in eerie light. The leader's eyes swept across the room and landed on me, holding the baby. His lips curled into a wicked smile. "There she is." I clutched my sister tighter, my body shaking. "No, you can't take her." The man laughed coldly. "Child, she doesn't belong to you. Your mother made a deal." I turned to my mother, shocked. "You promised her to them?" She didn't answer. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she covered her face with her hands. That silence was louder than any confession. "Give us the baby," the leader ordered, stepping closer. His boots echoed on the floor like thunder. My father moved in front of me, blocking their way. "You'll touch that child over my dead body." The man chuckled. "That can be arranged." One of the other men pulled out a long knife, its blade glinting in the lantern light. My breath caught in my throat. The leader raised his hand. "Don't make this harder than it should be." Your wife agreed. "You'll all get money. Enough to change your lives forever." But my father roared, "No amount of money is worth my child's life." He lunged at the man with the knife, and in an instant, chaos exploded in the room. The men shoved him back, slamming him against the wall. My mother screamed, falling to her knees. I tried to run, clutching the baby, but one of the men grabbed my arm. His grip was like iron. "Let me go," I cried, kicking and fighting with all my strength. The baby shrieked, her tiny arms flailing. My heart pounded as I thought they were going to snatch her from me. Suddenly, my father broke free and tackled the man holding me. Both of them crashed onto the floor, rolling and wrestling. The knife clattered away, skidding under the table. The leader shouted, "Get the child. Now." Another man lunged toward me. I spun around desperately, but there was nowhere to run. The baby's cries grew louder, almost as if she understood the danger. And then, just when his hands were about to grab me, the door flew open again. This time, it wasn't strangers. It was our neighbor, Mr. Thomas, carrying a heavy stick. Behind him were 2 other men from the village, each holding farming tools like weapons. "What's going on here?" Mr. Thomas thundered. His eyes widened when he saw the men and the knife on the floor. The leader hissed, "This is none of your business." But Mr. Thomas raised his stick high. "When you threaten children, it becomes everyone's business." The room fell into a tense silence. The 3 men stood frozen, their eyes darting between my father and the angry neighbors. For the first time, I saw fear flash across their faces. But then, without warning, the leader whistled sharply. Outside, more footsteps pounded on the ground. Shadows moved at the doorway. I realized with horror, they hadn't come alone. More men were waiting outside. The house was about to be overrun. The sound of rushing footsteps outside made my blood run cold. Shadows stretched across the doorway as more men appeared, their figures dark against the lantern light. There were at least 5 of them, maybe more. My father shouted, "Mary, take your sister and hide." But where could I go? The room felt smaller and smaller, with danger closing in from every side. Mr. Thomas gripped his stick tightly. "You'll not take a child from this house," he bellowed, swinging it at the first man who tried to step forward. The stick cracked against the man's shoulder, sending him stumbling back with a groan of pain. The fight erupted. The room filled with shouts, heavy blows, and the sound of crashing furniture. My father wrestled one of the strangers to the floor, his fists flying. The neighbors swung their tools with fury, driving back 2 of the intruders. But the leader stood tall, his eyes never leaving me and the baby. He didn't fight. He didn't even move. He just watched, waiting for the perfect moment. I pressed my sister close to my chest, whispering, "It's okay, I'll protect you," though my heart was trembling with fear. Suddenly, the leader barked, "Enough!" The room fell silent for a brief moment. His hand slid inside his coat, and when it came out, he was holding a small black pistol. The glint of the gun froze everyone where they stood. My stomach dropped. I had never seen a gun before, but I knew what it meant. Anyone who moves, the leader snarled, dies. My father froze, his chest heaving, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow. Mr. Thomas lowered his stick slowly, his face tight with rage and fear. The leader's gaze shifted to me. "Bring me the baby," he ordered, his voice calm but deadly. I shook my head violently. "No. She's my sister." His lips curved into a cruel smile. "Then you will watch her die." The gun rose slowly, pointing at the basket where the baby had once lain. I felt my knees weaken. My breath came in short gasps. He was serious. He wasn't bluffing. "Please, don't hurt her," I cried out, tears streaming down my cheeks. The leader stepped forward, his gun still raised. "Hand her over. Now." For a second, I thought my mother would speak up, beg him to stop. But she stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes darting between the baby and the man. My father's voice broke the silence. "Don't you dare point that at my children." His voice shook, but his eyes burned with fire. The leader sneered. "Then stop me." And before anyone could move, a gunshot exploded. Bang! The sound was deafening. Smoke filled the room. My ears rang so loudly I couldn't hear my own scream. The baby shrieked in terror, her cries piercing through the chaos. I spun around in horror. Someone had been hit, blood splattered against the wall. But in the blur of shock, I couldn't tell who it was. I will never forget the moment my father's words echoed in the small room. "They won't keep her alive for long." My knees grew weak, and I nearly dropped the baby. My heart screamed louder than my sister's cries. "What do you mean?" I shouted. "They took Mother. Isn't that enough? Why would they hurt her?" My father's face was pale, his eyes hollow. "You don't understand, Mary. Those men, they don't just buy and sell children. They sell people. Your mother doesn't know what she walked into." The truth hit me like a stone. My mother had traded herself, thinking she was saving the baby, but in reality, she had just thrown herself into the lion's den. I hugged my sister tighter. "We have to get her back." Mr. Thomas, still holding his stick, shook his head slowly. Those men are dangerous, John. Going after them could get us all killed. But my father's jaw tightened. She may have betrayed us, but she's still my wife. I can't let her die in their hands. For the first time, I saw courage in his eyes. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love twisted by all the wrong choices he had made. But one thing was certain, he was ready to fight. The night grew heavier. We sat in silence, only the crackle of the lantern and the baby's soft whimpers filling the air. I was just a child, but in that moment, I felt like I had aged 100 years. Then came the sound that shattered the silence. Screams in the distance. A woman's screams. I knew that voice. Mother! I cried. My body moved on its own. I ran to the door before anyone could stop me, clutching the baby in my arms. Outside, the moon cast a ghostly light on the village. Shadows danced in the distance. My father chased after me. Mary, stop. It's a trap. But it was too late. I saw them. The men had tied my mother to a tree at the edge of the forest. Her hair was wild, her face bruised, but her eyes found mine. Run, Mary, she screamed. Don't come closer. The leader stepped out from behind her, pistol still in hand. His cruel smile spread wide as he saw me. Ah, there's my little bird. And the baby. My stomach dropped. He had planned this all along. He had left her tied there as bait, because he knew we would come. The other men emerged from the shadows, circling us like wolves. Mr. Thomas and my father stood in front of me, but we were outnumbered. The men carried sticks, knives, and ropes. The leader's voice thundered across the clearing. It's simple. Hand over the baby, and I'll let the woman live. Refuse, and you'll watch her die in front of you. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. My baby sister squirmed in my arms, her cries sharp and desperate. I wanted to scream, to beg, but no words came out. My father raised the knife. You'll get nothing from us, he shouted. His voice shook, but there was fire in it. The leader laughed coldly and cocked the pistol. The sound froze the night. My mother's eyes widened. No, please, she begged, tears running down her face. And then it happened. The leader pointed the gun, not at my father, not at me, but at my mother. His finger tightened on the trigger. Say goodbye, he hissed. The night exploded with a gunshot. The sound echoed through the trees, louder than thunder. My scream tore through the darkness as my baby sister wailed in my arms. And in that moment, as the smoke from the pistol curled into the night sky, I knew our lives would never be the same again. What would you have done if you were in Mary's shoes? Would you have risked everything to save your baby sister, or stayed back in fear? This story shows us how greed and evil can tear a family apart, but it also teaches that courage, even from a child, can shine in the darkest of nights. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what lesson you've learned from this story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of these unbelievable true life stories.